Are we fallen? This is a question I hear sometimes from often Christian circles that believe that human beings are somehow fallen from grace, lost in original sin after the Garden of Eden, perhaps connected to the fallen angels uh, described in some scriptures in both Christian and Hebrew texts as well as some other ancient texts. And I have to tell you that it doesn't matter. It really just doesn't matter whether we're fallen or not. It is always about how we approach this very moment, not about what we did even 5 minutes ago. It's true. And because we don't take that truth seriously, we are lost in the past. Doesn't mean we're fallen in the past, just means that we're not getting over ourselves. We're not allowing ourselves, whatever we've done, whoever we are, whatever our history, doesn't matter. If we find ourselves here now and just hold all the faces of ourselves as they come up within with compassion, we are starting to recenter ourselves in the only place we ever really are, which is the point of awareness, of consciousness. Now, our minds, before our minds can really learn who's watching them, who's watching that thought, that idea, before our minds really start to pay attention to where we really are, the ones watching, it can feel like we're fallen. It can feel like we're lost. It can feel like we're disconnected from God. But in reality, how could we ever be disconnected from God? The mind can behave totally insanely, totally centered on itself as a separate entity, which it's not, from everything else, everyone else, at least most people. And yet, the one watching that mind, the light shining, that spiritual sunshine, isn't those things. It's like the Bible says in other texts as well, God shines on everyone alike. And that God that's shining in your life, closest you're going to get to God is you. And in fact, there's no difference. The closest you're ever going to get to God is realizing that the one who watches the mind that feels fallen, that feels upset, that feels anxious most of the time, is none of those things. It is that divine child that Christ called each of us. It's that son or daughter or what have you of God. And so, no, I don't believe that we're fallen, and I don't necessarily believe that we're not fallen. The mind is kind of fallen, so to speak. But like I said, it doesn't matter. When we start to just accept the past, to give compassion for ourselves and for those that we need to forgive, because they are a part of us, whether we like it or not. Doesn't mean we have to let them into our lives, doesn't mean we have to let them in the door, doesn't mean we can't keep them in a prison or in some rehabilitation program that they need, if only our world worked that way. But it does mean accepting the universe as God has made it. Yes, God is part of our history. God's providence is in the details. I'll let that soak in and sink in for a second. Some of us believe that, some of us don't. If you don't believe it, you don't have to believe it. But for those of us who believe God's providence is in all the details, as Swedenborg said, we should really remind ourselves of that every day. It would help. Because then we'd start to realize that every single thing that happens is actually meant to strengthen us, to teach us in this life, now, or in the future, or in the next life. Really, it's going to teach us whenever we're willing to be present to ourselves. In a way, it means not living in the past, but it also means that those emotions that have been wanting to bubble up, that we've been fighting or hiding, those things are going to come out or up to that awareness that is the life of every being. And because we're not so invested in this history that we tell ourselves, we're going to allow it to be, to feel itself, to be itself. Doesn't mean we're going to use it to strike out. We've been doing that enough, I'm sure, right? Just being ourselves, reacting to people, that's us not dealing with our emotions most of the time. It's us striking out at our loved ones because they did something little. We don't know why we hold such little things against people, right? Just how I feel, right? It's just how I feel. But a lot of it has a connection to the past that we're not willing to see, and we're fighting. And it may seem a little counterintuitive, but the more we let go, forgive the past, stay in the moment, the more these things can come up and have their moment in the sun. And that allows healing, it allows growth for the mind, for the body, for the environment. But guess who never really needs to grow? It's you. It's the true you, the consciousness, the awareness that we all share. And so, yes, we should remember Providence is in the details, that our minds were, in a lot of ways, gifted to us. We had little control about a lot of things when we were young. The structure of that brain when you were born, you had no control over. The things, the inputs, you really had no control over as a little one. You didn't know if this or that would hurt you. Same with the other inputs, whether it's food or school or what have you. And all the things that seem like us standing up and getting it done, we had little control over too. That sense of being able to, of wanting to. And so in a way, it's like all a flowing river, including the thing closest, seemingly, to this awareness that we each have, our bodies, our minds. And if that body-mind can start to see that, if you can see that in your thinking more and more often, that, oh, I'm identifying as this thing, but really the light that's shining isn't these thought constructs, it's not this history, it's not these feelings, it's openness, it's peace, which is why we call Christ the Prince of Peace, and why we call Krishna, Shiv or Shiva, Goddess, Kali, all these things powerful, luminous, illuminating, insightful, wise, loving, infinite, because it is. Consciousness, awareness, life, really it's love, is all those things. And whether you're looking at a lamb or a lion, you're seeing consciousness shine onto a mind and onto a universe that we all share. So in a lot of ways, this universe is one big mind. one giant mind with a lot of little hubs and little points of consciousness in many different places, and maybe, showing up in ways we wouldn't suspect given our perspective. And that whole universe is like one giant mind, and every little thing, including where this body was born, this mind was raised, was working in conjunction with the stars, with the planets, with the galactic center, with other galaxies, and on and on and on. Which is why, maybe not the daily horoscopes, but some aspects of astrology actually are so true, to the larger constructs in society. Because in a way, it's all an expression of the one mind we call the universe or multiverse. I was thinking about the word united the other day and realizing that if you really break it down, it's kind of surprising for me anyway. It's unitted, united, right? Unitted. And really, that's so true. To be united with something, that it's an it part has to fall away. When we're united with a loved one, we stop treating them like an it. We've unitted with them or something, right? And when we look at the universe, it's good to realize really what's going on, because it'll help us unitify, become unitted with everything. Because we stop treating and thinking of everything as separate its. And so, yes, if you learn more about astrology, it's not just hocus pocus, not that that's necessarily nothing, but it is something so grand. And so is magic, really. What we call magic is just science that we can't explain. And yes, there are ways to misuse magic and all these things. And often when we're not in a state of connectedness with God, with the Christos, with Christ, we're going to misuse those things just like we misuse every day. And the scriptures were smart to say, well, folks today aren't doing so hot in the camp of being unknitted, so stay away from magic. Stay away from this. Stay away from that. Don't do this. Don't do that. In fact, if you look at some of the books of the Bible, the Quran, and others, you see a lot of different, very narrow structures that most Christians would never want to follow, right? Most Muslims ignore those parts, or, oh, maybe that's not the right hadiths or something. That's not my tradition in whatever, Judaism. Even in science today, if you're atheist, in the religion of science, you could say, we don't believe, right, in the supernatural. But we also don't really take serious the quantum physics that tell us everything's one. That would be good science religion, right? That would be healthy science religion, is if we took very seriously the science that says, oh, things only materialize in consciousness. And really, if science wanted to be actually scientific, the most base level of science is realizing that you can never prove anything appears outside of consciousness. How could you prove that? How could you prove that in a scientific experiment? And funny enough, the quantum physics comes up to back that up, saying, well, actually, without conscious interaction, this is in a nebulous state, whatever that means, right? And a lot of times when we start from a materialistic perspective, as if science has somehow proven that things exist outside of consciousness, which is impossible, right? Because we always approach everything in consciousness. When you come from that material side, which is a belief in science, in some science, you start to not even like, new quantum physics experiments that actually show that, oh no, it really is consciousness that solidifies these things. We say, oh, it's just the instruments and the testing and stuff. No, new experiments show that it's actually consciousness. So whatever it is, our minds have a hard time taking these things to their pinnacle, because how could they, right? The implications, whether you're a Christian or um, a Buddhist. And that's why really good religion or good spirituality has to just point back to what doesn't need to learn to be better and better and better and better. The mind always is sometimes there, but then it does this and that. And when we identify with that, it's never good enough, at least in terms of an embodiment of peace, of happiness and joy. That's why we feel and get bogged down in so many emotions, because we're over investing in something that can never get the job done. And this is why Christ said, turn around, turn within. See that heaven is within you, is in your midst. And even in your midst externally is still within your consciousness. And also, yes, at your core. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, it's close. And that's also why he talked to the quote unquote Father the way he did, as one, because he realized he is one with the Father. And he invited us to be one with the Father too. He didn't say, I'm inviting you to be one with the Father, but never act like it. Never think like you're one with God. He didn't say that part, did he? He didn't say, oh, be in me as I am in you. But actually don't, because I'm the best. No, they left that part out, that last part. No, he said these things because he wanted us to do them and take it seriously, not to play a humble Christian, right? Not to play a humble whatever. Even in our holographic theory, everything's a simulation. There's a lot of evidence for that, because in a lot of ways it's true, right? Everything's holographic. Everything's an image of itself. It's all interconnected, and it all seems to be projected out of something infinitely small, maybe. I don't know all the science, but maybe those who do could share some more in the comments. Because that's what it is. It's all a hologram of consciousness itself, the infinitely small, which is also infinitely big, because size is nothing to it. Everything appears within it, seemingly outside of it, right? Consciousness, it seems, is within everything, but also everything seems to be within it, because everything's seen in consciousness. These aren't just word games or mind games. That's just our experience. It's how it's our experience every day. Everything appears in our heads. And we seem like we look out at everything. Those two things are paradoxical on paper, but clearly true. And so in that holographic view of a simulation, we still know everything's one, right? There's still some higher intelligence that's making that simulation. What is that higher intelligence like? Does it like pizza on Fridays? We ask funny questions and treat it like it's us, because in a way it is. But sometimes we use it as a scapegoat, saying, well, we can't really know. And yet we already know enough. We're one. We're one. This is all for a higher purpose, even in simulation theory or what have you, right? It's all meant to calculate something. Maybe the people running the giant simulation saves all the good NPCs and puts them in a box over here called heaven, and they get to have a lot of fun. Right? Could be. Sounds like a video game to me. We won't talk about what the bad NPCs go through because they make it bad on themselves. We don't need to work too hard for them to find hell, right? And it's true for each of us. We make our own hell. Make our own hell. Whether it appears outside of us or not, in terms of what, fires or something, doesn't matter. We make our own hell. And we see in the world what we are. You're seeing in me, at the best, what you are, and at the worst, what you are. We tend to judge other people by things we don't want to see in ourselves. Something we don't want to see in ourselves, that tends to be the thing that drives us insane about other people, especially those close to us. That's just how the mind works. Can only reflect and judge based on the constructs it holds dear that are maintained within its own structure. But the consciousness that sees that, it's so free. And so, like a good preacher, I have to invite us to just accept that Christ is here with us. I have to invite us to just see the peace that we are. Because I don't really know what my job is in this world. I know what my job is on paper. But I do know that I'd like it to be a better place. And I would love it if we could have more joy and more peace together. Because it's clearly possible, and yet we've made it so hard on each other, right? I know many of you feel the same way, which is great. And I know that our highest self has planned whatever's going on in your life right now to the T. You've accepted this before it happened, and you're going to accept it again when you reach that place of higher view in the future and higher wisdom. And there's always a higher vantage point in a sense, but there's always a part of us that's already there because it is the only one that truly is. It's love, it's life, it's light. So thanks for joining me today here at Spiritual Sunshine. And go forth knowing that you are loved and are love. Peace.